You've been part of the chorus of health leaders in this country urging Australians to download the COVIDSafe app. I recall you were even there alongside the Health Minister at its official launch. Now that we know the app hasn't been used to find a single case of coronavirus, is it a dud, as Labor is suggesting today?
Good afternoon, Ashley. And look, I think it's way too soon to really make any of those calls. What we've seen is that since the app was launched, indeed, both combined with the amount of restriction of movement and restriction of mobility, and then the subsequent, in 7 out of the 8 states predominantly, the absence of community transmission, we wouldn't have expected the app to really be to come into its own before that. In Victoria, clearly the case definition and the case contacts were all such that they were easily identifiable family, work, or direct contacts of someone who was being diagnosed with COVID-19. And so clearly that information, that hasn't been led to an additional case contact. Where we're going to see its benefit is when we start to get a large uptick in community transmission and indeed a local hotspot where people don't have no immediate means or connection to other people at that place, such as the Crossroads Hotel in the next few days, and we may see some activity from that, indeed only if people have had it switched on. And indeed, when we look at it, even though 40% of all mobile phones have downloaded it, it also requires the app to be switched on for it to be effective. So we need more Australians to download it and to be switched on, and then to be used in, obviously, periods of significant community transmission to judge its effectiveness or not.
You mentioned the New South Wales clusters. Are you comfortable with the new restrictions announced today in terms of limiting numbers in pubs and clubs, or would you like to see the state government there in New South Wales go further in some of those hotspot areas that have been declared?
There is no doubt that we expected outbreaks and local hotspots, and one of the key measures to control any of that additional hotspot activity is to test as widely as possible, to contact trace, and then to isolate all those known contacts and cases. Clearly, what we've also then got to do is, if the numbers are pointing to that, we do need to look at minimising both the movement and mixing in general. So it would be really wise to look at the numbers, especially over the next few days. And if it does show that those hotspots or those localised outbreaks are showing more signs of activity, I think the localised restrictions would be further in place, would be appropriate.
As you mentioned, time is of the essence there. What is your assessment of how Victoria is going in its management of the latest outbreak? When will we, when will we actually know if the strong measures that have been taken there have actually worked? I mean, we've seen another 270 new cases just in the past 24 hours in that state.
So clearly, the CBD or the Melbourne Metropolitan and Mitchellshire lockdown occurred just on a week ago, and we really would expect to see the benefits of all of that start to translate through in 10 to 14 days. Clearly, if that doesn't occur, we have an even more significant problem on our hands. Every day we have, even though those numbers are still haven't continued to exponentially increase, they still are a worrying sign, especially each day the number of unlinked cases that are identified each day, and then subsequently you might establish a link in the subsequent days. But each number of those days, those cases are a significant number each day, is a worry, is a concern. And clearly also what we do need to see is that we, at some point in the next 4, 5, 7 days max, we see a turn in that, a plateauing and a turn in those numbers significantly day on day, not just one-day trends. And that's where we've really got to carefully monitor it. But decreased mixing, decreased movement, the physical distancing and the social distancing, the washing your hands, the cough etiquette, staying away, getting yourself tested if at all any symptoms, and of course, having that COVIDSafe app are all part of the guidelines that got Australia through the first wave and will surely assist us in managing localised outbreaks of any size or spike as appropriate.
We're all pinning our hopes on a vaccine, of course. We've learnt about the University of Queensland vaccine, which is now being trialled on humans. We have seemed to have heard a lot of potential breakthroughs in recent weeks. Is this trial our best hope so far? Just how significant is that it has progressed now to human trials?
There are many phases in the development and then commercialisation of any vaccine, and this now, the human phase trials, is a significant next step. Of course, we do need to temper our knowledge, knowing that we've never successfully had a coronavirus vaccine to market before. Vaccine, it can be very, very tricky, even in the final stages. So this, as welcome as it is, as expeditiously done as it is, with all the collaboration of human capital around the world in this regard, we still need to be cognizant that it may be indeed many months, if not well into next year, before we have a successful vaccine. And then we need to produce the significant number of doses to cover the populations required. And that's no mean stretch whatsoever.
So knowing that and knowing what we do about the situation in Victoria and the developing situation in New South Wales, what is your advice to other states and territories, people sitting back in WA or Tasmania or South Australia, feeling pretty comfortable about how their state is travelling at the moment? Should restrictions keep being lifted in those states? Obviously, the border lockdowns look like they'll be continuing for some time, but would you like to see state governments holding back on plans to ease restrictions further?
Really salient time to look at the message that we put out just over 9 days ago that said it was asking all states and jurisdictions to pause on the lifting of further restrictions. Indeed, it's actually come to bear in terms of the number of states that have made tweaks, and indeed even gone as New South Wales has done today. It's really a reminder how quickly things can change. Just over a month ago, Victoria had a case the day where there were 0 cases reported. How quickly things have changed in Victoria, and that's a pointer to how quickly things can change in other states. The message is wearing thin in some parts of the community that we're over this. We've won it. We've kicked its proverbial down the road, and that's no longer a threat. I can assure you that coronavirus still is very much present and prevalent in the community. It only takes one slip up, one miss, one opportunity, and it will go for you, and it will certainly make you rue that slip up. And that's what we're seeing now. We need to be very, very vigilant and cautious and completely learn to live with COVID-19 in our community until we get an effective, easy treatment or vaccine or both. And then, even then, we still need to reappraise the way we go about our everyday lives, knowing that just as COVID-19 came out of nowhere, the next virus, the next threat might create an opportunity. So I think we need to really reevaluate many of the things that we took for granted in the past as we approach this new world after COVID-19.
Dr. Tony Bartone, the AMA President, always appreciate you joining us. Thank you for that.